"Are you done, soldier?" I was like, "Excuse me, sir? Are you done, soldier?" Those words just washed over me. And it hit me right there at my core. And when you put it in that perspective, when he put it in that perspective to me as I was laying there in that hospital room full of all these negative thoughts, he was really asking me, "Are you done? Are you quitting?" And my answer is still, and hopefully will always be, I am not done.
Someone cares about you.
There's a reason why your heart is beating.
You still have a purpose.
Don't give up.
It's important to know that you're not alone.
You're not alone.
You're not alone.
You are not alone.
Walking a mile every day offers numerous benefits. It's a simple yet powerful way to promote health and wellness. And that's why I want to encourage you to take a walk while listening to our interview with today's guest, retired Army Staff Sergeant Shilo Harris, a true inspiration, motivational speaker, and comedian. He's a veteran with deep military roots, and his resilience and determination after surviving a life-changing IED explosion is truly remarkable. Shilo's journey from serving as a cavalry scout in the U.S. Army to becoming a powerful advocate for PTSD awareness is just one of the many reasons I'm excited to have him on the show with us today. Shilo, welcome to the 1 Mile, 1 Veteran podcast.
Man, thank you so very much for having me on the show, Danny. So here's the thing. I signed me, my son, and one of my best friends up for a Tough Mudder, but I hurt my shoulder a while back. I put rings out in the shop, and so I tore my shoulder, and I hadn't worked out in a couple of months. So this morning, because I'm coming on this show, I did my mile, brother. I did my mile, and I have to say it was a little bit more than, so I worked out a little bit more than, 22 minutes or so. But I worked out. I was like, you know what? This is the perfect day to start my exercise routine. And I got out there and I was working in the yard, man. Yeah, running in the sand, and man, it felt good. Got out there and had me a little circuit set up. So, thank you for having me, Danny.
Absolutely. That's awesome that you're doing a Tough Mudder. We actually put together a 1 Mile, 1 Veteran Spartan race as often as we can, and our next one's going to be this August in Hawaii. So if you guys want to come out and do a 5K, please let me know, and I'll invite you to the team. But as our listeners begin their walk and turn on their Strava app to track their progress, man, I'd really love to hear about how your family's history of military service kind of influenced your own decision to join the Army.
Yeah, that's a great question. The weird thing is a lot of people don't realize I was kind of a late bloomer. When I was a teenager, I was not necessarily a good kid. It wasn't anything real bad, it was mostly like MIPs. And I grew up in a small town. It's like they knew where we all partied because just like generation after generation, they all hit the same place, out in the country or at the lake or something like that. The officers know where you are, so if you're out there drinking and causing trouble, they're going to find you easy. Well, they knew where we were. It seemed like every weekend. But I had all these MIPs, and of course, when I was younger, it prevented me from joining the military. Yet after 9/11, 2001, I wanted to join the military because, as you mentioned, I came from a family of veterans. My father, he was 82nd Airborne, Army infantry guy. My grandfather, World War II, Korea, and served during Vietnam. He made a career out of the military. And so, I had this influence. It was always something I wanted to do, but I didn't get to do it until after 9/11, and it presented a real opportunity for me to join. And just so you know, I did not mess it up. I seen it as a true blessing. I joined the military, man. I'm going to tell you what, I was the best soldier. I might not have been the best teenager, but dude, I was the best soldier ever. Like, even the drill sergeants were like, "You're enjoying this way too much, man. We're going to have you UA'd." I'm like, go for it.
That's wild, man. When I had learned that you had some minor possessions that had restricted you from going to the Army prior to 9/11, it reminded me that about 2 months before I actually joined the Navy, I got caught holding my older brother's beer. And it gave me an MIP, and I told my recruiter about it immediately. I was like, "I've got a court date. I'm going to finish the community service before I head to boot camp. But do we need to do anything?" He goes, "Well, if you're going to have all this taken care of, don't even worry about telling it." And I'm checking into the MEP station, and I guess it came up on their blotter, and I had to get a waiver before I could get on the plane to fly up to Great Lakes, man. So I'm glad post 9/11 service, you really managed to kind of find your calling, because you picked up staff sergeant pretty quickly. What was that time in service like up to the point of you picking up staff sergeant?
Yeah, so I did fast track. You are right. I did fast track. And so I had to overcome that stereotype because I had to have all these waivers. I was 27, almost 30 years old. And when I first got to Germany, in Germany, when you go overseas, when you join the military, I've always heard that it's good for your career. You kind of fast track, because you don't have a lot of social influence like you do in the United States. In the United States, you're more free to be out with your friends or whatever and drinking and maybe getting in trouble or whatever. But anyway, so I was in Germany. We still drank. We still, played pretty hard. Yet, it's like we all really minded our manners, so to speak, because we were in a foreign country. And so it was a new experience for all of us. But man, I got over there and some of the people that outranked me but were younger than I was, they realized that I wasn't, like mentally challenged or, I just did, the stereotype about joining the military late is that you didn't have many opportunities in the civilian world. And that wasn't true for me. It was like, I always wanted to be a soldier, and I was actually working on being a land surveyor back home. And, it was a really good job. It was wonderful. I really loved my job. But joining the military, man, it's like I had to overcome that. Well, he didn't have any opportunities in the civilian world. So a couple times there were people like try to talk down to me. And then when they realized that I had a good head on my shoulders, they're like, well, hell, man, you're not dumb, And I was like, no, I'm not dumb. I was like, I just joined the military late. And once they figured that out, it was like they kept giving me like tasks and opportunities, schools. I signed up for everything too. I volunteered for everything. I didn't mind. Like, we need to volunteer. And I'm like, hand up, because I wanted those experiences, whether it was good, bad, or ugly. I didn't mind. And all of that stuff just played into my role. And then I become that guy that everybody talked to because of my age, I think. I had a little life experience. So some of my younger NCO friends would be like, hey, man, I got a Dear John, or they got this or this happened in their life and they want to talk about it. So a lot of people would come to me and I kept it like a lockbox. And people come to respect me behind that. So I fast tracked pretty good in the military and made a lot of friends too, man. So it was a relationship.
That's really awesome. One of my good friends that's no longer with us, that was stationed with us out in Hawaii. He was I think he was 32 when he had joined. He was a nurse, but he had an opportunity to serve his country, kind of like yourself. When you had the opportunity to join, you decided that that's what you wanted to do, and like yourself, he also fast tracked. But unfortunately, sometimes roadblocks hit hard. And on February 19th, 2007, you hit a pretty hard roadblock, so to speak. Would you mind sharing about the experience that the IED attack has had, not on just your career, but your life in general?
Yeah, absolutely. As you mentioned, February 19th, 2007, I was on my second deployment. I was with the 10th Mountain Division. My first deployment had been with Big Red 1 out of Schweinfurt, Germany. We were mechanized. It was great. Taught me a lot, prepared me for that second deployment. I did get blown up, and it was about 700 pounds of explosives buried in the road. We were in a Humvee, 1114, and it just had the, up armor kits on it. The bomb that we ran over was designed for a much larger vehicle. And as I mentioned, this was my second deployment. So this was OIF 4, I believe, 2006 and 7. And, around that time, in 2006 and in early 2007, they were getting all those big vehicles. I think they called them Buffaloes and stuff like that. The big, higher up off the ground. And big V-bottom blasts, to prevent the blasts and stuff like that, or, from being too detrimental. Anyway, so there I was in this flat Humvee, just a little above the ground, and we had to hit the 700-pound bomb, and it blew my Humvee apart, man. 3 of the 4 Humvee doors were blown off, the entire top of the truck was blown off. And the sad part, and most tragic, is that we lost 3 friends that day. And our country lost 3 American heroes. Now, I don't remember a lot from the blast, of course, because I was knocked unconscious. Yet, once I woke up, I started trying to figure out what to do. I'm an NCO. I'm calling up radio report, trying to let everybody know, what's going on, because that's what you do, right? You let everybody know what's going on. And so I think that the reason this side of my face is the way that it is because I had the hand mic right here. And it was like right beside my hearing protection, and I had my hearing protection over here, and that way I could do crew checks and that sort of thing pretty easy. But anyway, So I called up the radio report, but there was nothing. I looked over and the cable was burnt completely off. I get out of the truck and I start barking orders, being an NCO, and I had no idea the condition that I was in. You know, 'cause I mean, I just felt weird. I knew I'd taken a hit, but when I got out, I'm seeing, you know, my driver, the other survivor over there fighting with everybody, and I'm trying to get him calmed down. I'm trying to get them to, you know, do what they're doing. I don't know how long I was unconscious, but what happened is while I was barking orders, everybody's just stopping and staring at me, which kind of enraged me because I'm like, what are you doing? You know, I'm like, call up the radio reports, do this, get the 911, get the helicopter, you know, get Adam under control. And so, you know, doing all these things. And then, all of a sudden I see my buddy waving at me and he's trying to get me to come to him, but I couldn't hear anything. When he come over there, he grabbed me and laid me on the ground. We started CLS. Helicopter was coming in, and everything happened the way that it should. But while I was laying there on the ground, my roommate came over, and I'm trying to do the self-assessment and figure things out. But while I was laying there, I remember getting a glimpse of my reflection in his glasses, and I started panicking. And started going into shock, and I told him, I was like, man, I said, they're not going to make me pay for that Humvee, are they? 'Cause I don't make a lot of money nowadays. And that was me trying to cope, you know. I'm like, okay, how can I make this funny? And then we're trying to find out where my soldiers are. I'm trying to find out where my guys are. If they finally bring Adam over there where I'm at, and they're getting us prepped, they got us, you know, in cover and everything. But I had survived 2 blasts, and that was what I think that's why everybody was so confused at first. But while I was unconscious in the vehicle, they were trying to tend to Adam. The AT-4, or the handheld rocket, you know, it cooked off inside that truck and caused a secondary explosion in a fireball, which probably burned me and injured me even more. So in their minds, they were thinking, well, if he wasn't dead from the first blast, he's certainly dead now. And there I was barking orders, and so it was just kind of shocking for everybody. But yeah, eventually I was medevaced out. They got me to Landstuhl, Germany. But before that, they got me to the green zone in Iraq. And I was medically induced in a coma that I spent about 48 days in. And, so that's a whole nother conversation, but yeah, it was 48 days in a coma. And then I woke up here in San Antonio, Texas at the Brooke Army Medical Center. And I've been here ever since. Not at the hospital, obviously, but
yeah. For those of us that were in Iraq and Afghanistan or followed the news closely during the time of some of the worst attacks, can definitely recognize the carnage of a 700-pound bomb on a flat bottom, light armored Humvee, and the impact that it has on the men and women that were in those vehicles. And for yourself, facing 3rd-degree burns over a third of your body, losing different appendages to include fingers, ears, and even the tip of your nose. When you came out of the coma, what was going through your mind?
oh, honestly, I didn't even know what to think yet, you know, and with me being heavily medicated, I'm sure that's part of it because everything was kind of foggy. You know, I want to say lucid in a way, you know, just a kind of dazed feeling most of the time. But I mean, I knew I was hurt, but I just never really comprehended how hurt I was. And then one day they walked into my hospital room and they said, Sergeant Harris, today we want you to take 10 steps. And, you know, being a combat soldier, I was thinking, 10 steps? I was like, man, I'm going to own this hospital. I do 25-mile ruck marches, you know, backwards in the snow. Just getting out of bed was so excruciating. I mean, that was like my first, like, oh shit kind of thing, you know, like this is real. This is really happening. And I'm trying to get up and it was like everything hurt all the way to my core. I felt like my bones were hurting, joints, everything. And I finally stood up and I was exhausted. And they was like, okay, let's take some steps. And I was thinking, oh God, I got to do more. You know, standing up was plenty. And I had 3 little shuffles. I mean, literally 3 little tiny shuffles. And I fell back down in the bed and I was done. Now, this is a part that I really want to share. Make sure that, you know, your audience gets this because this is something that it was a life-changing experience for me, and it still is, and something I try to share with as many audiences as possible because we all have a habit of doing it at times, having negative thoughts in your head. Now, as I laid back down in that bed, completely exhausted, I'm laying there and I can't breathe. I feel like I'm going to throw up, and now I'm thinking, I don't think I can do this. I don't want to do it. It's too painful. I'm okay with just laying here. Really, that's how painful it was. I felt like I'd lost all my dignity. I had lost all my pride. I felt broken, truly broken in that moment. And I encouraged it by having all those negative thoughts. And this went on for about 2 or 3 days where I was having this pity party. And here's a friend of mine, Colonel Montalvo. He used to come in all the time, and we'd talk about the Bible. We'd talk about this. We'd talk about that. And he was really encouraging during that time. And I want to say that this actually helped give me a foundation in, I guess, my religion, and helping me, pull out of that darkness through faith. And I mean this for anybody listening. It's not a matter of any particular faith, but faith in itself. Faith in religion can help you overcome so much. Because at the core of many religions is really good stuff, and how to live a good quality life with morals and values, right? And principles. Well, so we had these conversations, and then my mom comes in this one morning. She's feeding me breakfast because I couldn't use my hands. I was still in airplane splint. Couldn't use my arms. And she come in and she's feeding me breakfast, and this was our morning routine, and she was like, we really need you to come back. We need you to do this work. We need you to, start stepping up. And I was thinking, whatever. It's too hard, and I'm not going to do it. Nobody can make me do it. Well, after she left, she was a little disheartened, because I was stubborn still that morning. Not necessarily ugly, but stubborn. And then a little bit later, after she had left, my father came in. My dad, he was a short, stocky dude, right? A little Viking looking guy. And he was just standing there at the foot of my bed, just staring at me. And he's like dragging it out. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, okay, what is it? And, he drug it out even further. And then all of a sudden he's like, are you done, soldier? I was like, excuse me, sir? Are you done, soldier? Those words just washed over me, and it hit me right there at my core, right there in my heart. And I was thinking, am I done? Am I a quitter? Am I really giving up right now? And when you put it in that perspective, when he put it in that perspective to me as I was laying there in that hospital room full of all these negative thoughts, he was really asking me, are you done? Are you quitting? Is this your legacy? Is this what you want your family to remember you as? The guy that quit. And I looked at him and I told him, I am not done. And he said, then get your ass up and start doing the work. And he turned around and walked out of the room, and that was the end of our conversation. I was in there for I don't know how long with my thoughts, and it really resonated with me, and I knew that if I was going to get better, I had to do the work. I had to get up, I had to do the hard work that I'd been avoiding, and I had to make my life better because I want my children's life to be better. I want my wife's life to be better. Now my ex-wife, but that's still, it's still part of our story. It's still part of our journey. And I have a good relationship with her now. I wanted a good relationship then. It didn't work, but we have a great one now. And that's all we can do is strive and work hard to be better each and every day. Every day should be a better version of us than yesterday.
And that's really awesome that your family was able to play such a huge role in supporting you, especially in those early days, to challenge you to move forward. But as we know, also with a lot of veterans, yourself included, the injury isn't always the thing that keeps us down. Whether it's the chronic pain, whether it's the amputations, the hearing loss, the loss of sight, whatever the physical injury is, there starts to become a psychological impact, and that starts to reverberate throughout all of our relationships. And so how did you manage to start navigating not just the physical recovery, but the mentality of still engaging with your family after these injuries?
Yeah, that's a great question. I guess in a way, I like with the kids, I tried to be fun, even though, it's like, we're a very physical family. Like we wrestle, we play, that sort of thing. And it's almost like this, gauntlet around my house. It's like if I was to walk through like 3 or 4 of my kids, like standing on either side of me, at least 3 of them are going to punch me, right? Or like, act like they're going to punch me, that's just the way we play. And I'm trying to do that. I'm like all hobbled up and covered in bandages. And I remember one day I nut checked my son. And this is no joke. I caught him so good. He is doubled over Well, he caught me later, and it's like I said, I can still barely walk. And I introduced it myself. I know I did it to myself, but he nut checked me, bro. He caught me, and I mean, I couldn't even hardly bend over because I was in so much pain. And then that was hurting, and then I'm like, oh my gosh. I was like, what did I do? Why did I do that? Why did I do that to myself? He said, I'm trying to be a cool dad, but at the same time, I put myself in situations. I remember one time I had some work done on this finger, and anyway, we'd been wrestling, and I'd literally just been out of surgery like 3 days, and I had this pin in this finger, and I threw one of the kids over my head, and when I came back, the pin was sticking out of my finger like this long, and I was thinking, my finger's not like that long. I was like, where in the hell is that pin going in there, And anyway, I'm looking at it, and then I'm like, I wonder if I should push it back in there. And everybody's like, no! And I'm like, well, should I pull it out? I mean, I don't know what to do. I got this pin in my finger just sticking out, and I'm like, I guess I'll just pull it out. And I pulled it out, and it still had more. Anyway, so yeah, I've put myself in situations. I've tried to be fun. I've tried to be active. I've sacrificed some of my pain, so to speak, to be there for my family, my discomfort. But I've enjoyed it, and it was worth it. I just tried to be there. I tried to be there, and I tried to be as fun as I possibly could. And even with my wife, she's like, I need your attention. I'm like, okay. And I'm like, I have to put my blinders on and say, okay, I'm not going to let anything in the world distract me from this moment, because I need my family, and I know they need me. So it's this two-way street, man. We got to make sure that we're paying attention to them, and that's how it worked, man. It was something that I learned pretty early on too, because my wife at the time, I remember she'd been feeding me, because like I said, I still couldn't use my hand. I had to rely on everybody to do stuff like that. You know what I mean? It's kind of embarrassing for me, but I remember one time my wife was feeding me, and I was kind of snarky at her. I said something short, and she set the fork down, stuffed up, and she walked out of the room. She didn't say a word. She walked out of the room. About 30 minutes later, sitting there watching my food get cold, and I hollered at her, and I'm like, hey, are you going to come feed me? And she said, no, figure it out yourself. And I was like, uh-oh. I was like, that's a problem. A few minutes later, she came in and she said, okay, we're going to talk about your attitude and gratitude. And I'm like, yes, ma'am, we will. So, yeah, it is. It's a matter of being present for them and them being present for you. So
that's really awesome. And just on the note of being fun, I was watching one performance because you've got really good self-awareness about your injuries, about your mindset, and the things that you have to choose. With a father saying something like that, I can picture other people in the wrong headspace going, well, F him. Like, if he's not going to support me in this, forget about him. But your self-awareness and your fun attitude, I remember seeing you step up on stage and you pulled off your ears because the crowd was so emotional. What what kind of inspires you to get people to come at ease instead of having the expectation that the world adjusts to you?
Well, I think it helps with connecting with people, whether it's an audience or whether it's one-on-one or like we are right now, digitally. I think it's really good to connect with people on a personal level. And as you mentioned, this is kind of an everybody thing right now. As we're coming out post-COVID, there may be, I don't want to say, it might not be PTSD, but this was a very traumatic event for a lot of people. Some people lost their livelihoods, lost their lives. And so how do you overcome situations like that? The self-awareness is a big part of it, and having some kind of human connection, not just fleeting, but actually having a connection with somebody is so important in our lives. Now, I know that, there's a lot of awkwardness, or at least, in some of the people that I've met, there's still some awkwardness as far as being together in a group. You can see people almost having anxiety, oh damn, I'm in a group of people. It's obviously not as bad as it was a couple of years ago. And that's why I think that this year is just going to be amazing, right? I really do. I feel like this is going to be a good year. Despite some of the bad things that are going on in the world, people are hungry. People are ready to get back to work and start living their lives. And that's another part of it. Now, being self-aware, though, it takes a lot of work. But once you get it down, it's kind of perpetual in my opinion. If I'm having a bad day today, now I cognitively think, okay, what happened earlier? What happened yesterday? What happened the day before? And how can I change it? Why do I feel bad today? Or why do I feel the way that I do right now? And, what do I need to avoid in the future? Those goes right back to that goes right back to triggers. And I think that you and I had talked about that a little bit earlier, having triggers for your PTSD or whatnot. And again, this goes beyond the veteran dynamic, the military dynamic. We're in a society right now that's filled with so many challenges and people struggling to make sense of some of the things that's going on around them, and they're trying to put their lives back together. But before you can do that, you got to know who you are and where you're going. So it's a big part of where your journey is being self-aware, not just about, your injuries or stuff like that, but I'm talking about being self-aware of who you truly are and what you need in your life and what you don't need in your life. I've had to cut people out of my life that wasn't good for me. Good friends, so I thought, but they weren't good for me. So that's part of it.
Yeah, when we're talking about some of those friends and stuff like that, I sit there and I think about my transition out of the military and what that was like, because when I had got out, I didn't suffer an injury. I asked for help for some conditions in order to prepare me for my 4th combat tour. And what resulted was me being discharged from the military. And part of that discharge was people recommending that I get involved in veteran service organizations and different groups. And what I was finding in a lot of these groups was a lot of resentment, a lot of anger, a lot of frustrations, especially during that time within the groups. I think a lot of these groups have now shifted their mindsets. A lot of the veterans are coming to grasp with the reality, kind of like yourself. They have some self-awareness, and there's a lot more positivity in these groups. But at the time, I had to say, I need to remove myself from these people because we're living in a place that's never going to exist again. We're hoping for things that our bodies and our minds can no longer do. And so with that kind of transition for me, having that much of an impact on me, how did you go about beginning your transition and then start sharing your story of positivity and kind of cut out a lot of that negativity?
I think a lot of it was going to boil down to faith and family. Those two dynamics were probably at least the biggest part of getting to where I needed to be mentally, emotionally, and cognitively. I wanted to be there for my children. And I literally worked really hard at it. Loud noises, I had to really train myself to not react when I hear loud noises. Or seeing certain things, So I don't always watch a lot of military movies, which is kind of sad for me, for the simple fact, I like action movies and I like hearing other veteran stories, and I like watching, things that's obviously connected to my world. Yet, some of the movies that I want to watch, I'm like, I probably shouldn't watch that because it might trigger me, and I'm like, so, there's certain things that you do and you avoid. I was going to say, so you had 4 tours to Afghanistan and Iraq?
I was preparing for my 4th, yeah. So I did 2 to Afghanistan, 1 to Iraq.
Wow, I didn't ever make it to Afghanistan. And I said this one day, I was like, man, I wish I'd go to Afghanistan. And one buddy was like, popped me in the back of the head. He was like, never say that. Never say that. I was like, well, I seen Iraq. I was like, oh, you get to see Afghanistan. I don't know, call it a personal thing, I'm like,
oh, man, side quest here. I remember getting ready for my... So I checked in on island on September 30th, 2004. To my unit, and 2 of the corpsmen that were chosen to go to Afghanistan did not want to go. And so I remember telling my unit chief, I was just like, hey, my sea bag's still packed. I'm fresh out of training. I've been in the Navy now for almost 2 years. I'm ready to go on deployment. If they need volunteers, pick me. And I remember them asking me, well, aren't you scared? And this is just a dumb 20-year-old response. I said, no, I'm excited. Like I didn't think of the dangers. I landed a month and 6 days after checking in on island in Afghanistan, forgetting to tell my family. I just forgot. Like just hindsight 2020. Oh my gosh. It it was the most reckless thing that I had ever done, but it was also still like one of the most beautiful experiences that I can look back on and say, I love it. It helps shape who I am. And it's one of the stories that I kind of tell regularly, because when people ask me about like joining the military, I tell them, consider the toll that it'll take on your family. They need to be a component of your choices, because eventually you come home to them, hopefully. And if you don't, you also have to have that conversation with them too. And I think that that's a really big part that a lot of service members may not consider. I know I didn't consider it at the time, was the impact that my choices would have on my family.
That is really good. And it's something else that you and I had kind of touched on before, was talking about those tools. Having that tool bag basically to help, fight the, and this is where I really feel like PTSD. I think the reason it's so challenging is because most people, and I should say this, I'm speaking for myself. In my mind, I feel like PTSD is one of those things that it's like I'm fighting. I want to fight this, but it's basically like I'm fighting myself.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because it's all inside. I mean, a lot of us can see, what our challenge is, whether it's somebody or something, and we can overcome it. We can wrestle it. We can tie it up. We can do something with it and get it out of our lives, put it in a bag and dump it in the dumpster, whatever. But PTSD, you can't. PTSD, you can't see it, you can't smell it, you can't taste it, you can't hear it. But you feel it. You feel it in your core, you feel it inside. And sometimes I imagine like this cartoon character just, like pulling my chest open and there's this black stuff just comes out, and that's PTSD. How do you fight something like that? And I think that's where some of the greatest challenges come in, is you have to learn how to fight it, because there are tools. There are a lot of tools that we have to use, but you have to be vigilant about it. You have to stay on it, because, and this is just something that I was wanting to tell you, I was talking to one of my friends about PTSD, and he said he thinks about suicide all the time. And he said it's not like he thinks about killing himself all the time, but he thinks about PTSD. He thinks about, the things that's going on in his life. And he said it's like he's always got to be aware of these negative thoughts that sometimes just jump out. Like, oh man, I wish I could just kill myself right now. And then it's like, no, wait, I don't want to say that. I can't say that. No, I can't think like that. And he said it's just like this never ending battle, but he said he always keeps it in his mind that, it's a disease, that it's something that it's not him. It's not him at his core, at his heart. And he wants to leave a stronger legacy for his family. And I was like, I 100% agree. And what do you think about that?
Yeah. One of the things that I always kind of thought about PTSD, my depression, my suicidal ideations, because it's always something that I have to be aware of, is something that lives in me now. It's a part of who I am. But in the past, I used to think it was something that we fight once, we win the battle, we've overcome it, and now we can move on with life. But the reality of these mental health challenges is that inner demon, that inner disease of suicidal ideations, depression, PTSD, it keeps fighting. Like, we can knock it down, but it finds ways to get back up. And so we have to remain vigilant. I mean, some of the defenses that I put up to help fight, some of the tools that I've learned and the mindset that I've adopted over the years was, if I have suicidal thoughts, the first thing that I do is I share it with another person. It is no longer something I keep to myself. It's not oh, poor me, I'm depressed. It's, hey, honey, this is what's going on in my head right now. It's a hard day. Don't know why, but it exists. And usually, without fail, within an hour or two, those thoughts are gone. I've now gotten rid of them. They are no longer a weight that me and my family are burdened by. With the PTSD stuff, I think that's the most frustrating one, because we find new triggers. And I like to be a person that pushes myself. Like, one of the tools that I learned in therapy was to continue to push forward. Don't let our anxieties and our mental health hold us back. And so in my pushing, I find new triggers, and then I have new episodes, and I go, well, now I've learned something new about myself. And I kind of, when I started listening to some of your speeches online, you actually talk about everything in life as a gift. And that's how I kind of now look at PTSD and my suicidal ideations, is that this is a gift that I get to share with other people. I get to share the fact that this year alone, man, I never thought I would be able to travel as extensively as I did. It was usually go out for 2 weeks. And when I was in a new place, I'd maybe go out for 2 or 3 hours and then retreat back to the hotel room. That was kind of how I would travel and vacation. This year, I've been to 7 different countries, 4 different continents. I've been on the road since February of last year, and getting more and more and more active. And yeah, there's been setbacks, but because of the gift of my PTSD and the tools that have been given to me, I've been able to learn a new way of living. What about you with your approach and like why you teach everything as a gift? How does that kind of stand out in your life?
Well, for one, somebody asked me literally like a couple of days ago. I had a presentation here in San Antonio with a group of students from Texas A&M, and this one guy said, "How do you stay so happy?" And I said, I'm not always happy. I said, but for the most part, I said, I think if you were to boil it all down, the core and the bottom line of this is I'm happy to be alive. And, and that's one of the biggest gifts that I can say is even with PTSD, even with these challenges, even with my physical limitations, I feel extremely blessed. Like you're talking about traveling, we travel quite a bit for work and for play. That's something that keeps us alive. But this is something that I want to point out. And I watched my dad do it. And there was one of my really, really good friends. He brought something to my attention that I didn't think about. And I want to share this because this is another dynamic. So this buddy of mine, he was a sheriff deputy. I heard him talking to some people, and they were asking him how the VA was, wherever he was at. And he was like, oh my gosh, it's so horrible, and blah, blah, blah. They don't do nothing for me. Well, we get back to camp, and we're talking about it, and I'm like, hey man, I said, tell me about your VA, what's going on, because I know a lot of people. I'd be happy to try to help and talk to somebody. And he goes, oh, they just don't do anything for me. And I'm like, well, tell me what happened. And he said he had this really bad PTSD episode, and he was, basically walking around his house for 3 days with his service weapon because he felt like somebody was going to get him. He was hypervigilant. He was paranoid. His kids, his wife were all freaked out. And, he had young children and stuff. And I said, man, that's really unsafe. I said, what, did you talk to your counselor about it? And he goes, hell no. And I said, well, why didn't you talk to your counselor about it? And he said, well, 1, I don't want to lose my job. I don't want them to take my service weapon. And he said, and 2, he said, I don't want them to think I'm crazy. And I said, so let me get this straight. You want the VA to help you, but you're not willing to tell them what is actually going on in your life. I said, so how are they supposed to help you if they don't know? And he said, they've been doing this long enough, they should just know. And I don't know, man, that just hit me so hard because I was thinking, I watched my dad do it. I watch other people do it all the time. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm so sick. And then they get in front of a doctor and they're like, what you sick with? And they're like, nothing. I just don't feel well. It's like, but some of the tools that I use, and these are some of the tools that I use that's really helped me, is 1, saying what you mean. Whatever's going on in your life, just say it. And, first of all, you're talking to a medical professional. You should have some kind of professional courtesy. But if it is weapons related, how would you actually feel if you were to hurt somebody because of you not being in the right state of mind? And I know that can happen without a weapon, yet it's much more likely with a weapon. And so people need to be aware of, well, I don't want to lose my guns. Well, I don't want to lose my guns either, but I would feel so horrible if I was to hurt somebody, an innocent. I would rather somebody take all of my guns and all of my bullets and all of my knives, so that way I would not hurt anybody if I was going to be a threat. But what I have done is I work out, I watch what I eat, I watch my alcohol, if I drink at all. I set a limit. I'm like 2, 3 drink limit. And if I feel like I'm drunk, then I'm like, I'm really done then for sure. Because alcohol can be your biggest demon, man. It pulls that darkness out. It encourages it, it enhances it. And if you're drinking to try to make yourself happy, it doesn't work that way. You should be happy in drinking if you're going to drink at all. But here's the thing that I've learned is we don't need alcohol. We really don't. We don't need alcohol. Nutrition, sleep, staying away from drugs, and working out, those are some of the biggest factors that help me each and every day. Keeping your body active, keeping your mind and your heart healthy, and just practicing loving people. Practice love. And that's what I do, man. I practice love every day. And when I say, I'm happy, I am happy. I'm happy to be alive because I love life. I love my family. I love the people I get to interact with. Danny, I love you, man. I love what you're doing. I love what Leanne's doing. You guys are out there changing lives and saving lives, and I can't thank you enough. And I'm so happy that I was able to come on and do this interview with you guys.
Shilo, it's been such a pleasure. I love you. I love your story. I love our listeners as well. Like that's why we do this, is because Leanne and I love people. And we want people to survive. I want to survive. You had mentioned some of these tools are of nutrition, fitness, limiting your alcohol control. But these are so many tools that we're not willing to pick up as a group, as a whole. A lot of people ask, how do I get to do what I do? Well, these are the things that I do, kind of like you mentioned. I haven't had a drink right now in over 12 years. Super grateful to God for that. I don't keep weapons around because I'm a threat to myself. Not because I don't want to be a threat to somebody else, but I've been a threat to myself. I don't want the ability to act impulsively. Nobody had to take my weapons away. I choose not to have them. I choose my profession, one that is fulfilling for me, so that I'm not walking home resentful every day. And then one of the thoughts that's been coming to my mind lately is struggling is a choice. We don't have to struggle through life. We choose to struggle through things, but there is so much help out there. There are so many resources out there. And I know, based on your personal experiences and what you've had to go through, you have so many tools in your bag. You've helped raise, and I know that one's still in the house, but you've helped raise 7 children, which is just a feat in of itself. Anybody that's had a single kid knows what you've been through. I watch my siblings go through it all the time. But one of the things that people still struggle with is they still struggle with not picking up those tools that are freely available and readily available, even if it's just the kind voice of a neighbor. And it ends in the tragic death of somebody by suicide. And so one of the last questions that I want to ask you, Shilo, is what message would you have, not just for service members, but anybody that is currently going through a battle of their own and needs some encouragement and some hope?
We all make mistakes. And this is it. What I've noticed with some of the veterans in my life, and even in my life, I see it. Sometimes we are hesitant to make a choice because we don't want to make the wrong choice. And I think being indecisive at certain moments is not a good thing, for the simple fact that we have to make choices, good or bad, right or wrong. There's always a gamble. You don't know the outcome because hindsight's always 20/20. But moving forward, be the person that makes decisions for yourself, first of all. As you said, Danny, you got to do this for yourself. Make the choices. Be willing to make that choice. But just as you said, alcohol, guns, drugs, all of these things. I've seen somebody, you can tell them, say, you know what, these vitamins right here are the best vitamins in the world. You need them. They're good for you. And they're like, okay. And they won't spend the money on that, but they'll go buy a 30-pack or a bottle of booze. They won't buy the vitamins, but they'll buy the booze. That is not the good choice. So this goes back to choices. What choices are you going to make in your life for a greater outcome? Because land navigation, think about land navigation. You got a compass. There's 360 degrees. If you're 1 degree off, it puts you at a whole different location, right?
Mm-hmm.
The further you go, the further your destination is off of whatever, that 1 degree off is. And the same thing can be said in a positive way. So if we make 1 degree of change in our life, like instead of buying that 30-pack today, I'm going to go over there and I'm going to go buy those vitamins. Or instead of buying that 30-pack today, I'm going to go buy something healthy or save that money for a rainy day. It only takes one good choice every now and then to change the outcome of your life. And then before long, after you get used to making that 1 degree of change here and there, you just keep increasing it until you can turn your life around and be where you want to be. What is your legacy going to be? And in those moments, when you think that you just can't go anymore, I want you to think, am I really done right now? Am I quitting? And think about that. Are you done, soldier? And my answer is still, and hopefully will always be, I am not done.
Thank you so much, Shilo. That's such a great message. You've done so many amazing things pre and post service. You currently, a couple years ago, released your memoir, Still Will. I heard you're working on another book. You're working on a film as well, and you have a short one out available on Amazon. So where can people find you, connect with you, and get in touch?
Okay, so yeah, absolutely. I'm on social, of course, Instagram. It's just my name, Shilo. And Shilo is Shilo, no H on the end. And it's fine either way. It doesn't bother me. H on the end of Shilo is the most common spelling. But yeah, they can come to my website, shiloharris.com, hit me up there, social. I'm pretty easy to find. The book Still Will, it was a good book. I'm really glad that I wrote it. It was actually, at a time when I was still married to Catherine. And, Catherine, she just, like I said, she was a rock. I give her a lot of kudos. We had a lot of problems, but marriage is tough, man. You let a bomb go off in the middle of it, makes it even harder. So, that's just part of it. But, the book I meant it to be a tool. And my writer asked me, she said, what's your goal with this book? And I said, if I can save one life, it's worth the journey. And so we put a lot of good content in there. Now, I will be honest, as far as working on that next book, I thought I had it all figured out, and then we had some other changes in life. So I'm kind of back to the drawing board. But the short film, we did that in 2016, and it was the preliminary stage of building up for a feature film, which we literally just had a meeting this month, and we're going to come back to the film. We were trying to figure out if we were going to move forward or scrap it. Well, we did both, actually. So we scrapped the old script. We like it. But this isn't, I told him, I said, I don't want this to be just Shiloh's story. I said, I want this to be my community's story. How can we use a character, a veteran? And I said, it can be me or somebody else. I said, whatever. I said, but, I want to make sure that we're including stories from my community, from this community of veterans that, we're going to help a bunch of people. That's what I'm hoping for. And so we're redoing the script right now. We spent about 3 or 4 days of brainstorming. We got some great content. We met with a group of veterans in Fort Worth. Some of them were World War II. We had a Korean War veteran there, several Vietnam veterans, and we had some OIF, OEF veterans there and their spouses. And the director, his mind was just, he was like, this is incredible. And so we spent like 4 or 5 hours with these guys listening to different stories and different dynamics about what they would like to see in a movie of this caliber. And man, they were so warm and welcome. And anyway, but I'm real excited about this year. I'm real excited about where we're going and where we're going to end up. Because we're not there yet. We're not at the end of the line. I'm going to keep going. This is life, man. We're going to keep rolling until God wants me to come home.
I love it. That's awesome, man. You keep rolling. We really, truly appreciate your time here. Leanne sends her love as well. Thank you, Shilo, again for joining us here on the 1 Mile, 1 Veteran podcast.
Yeah, brother. Man, Danny, thank you so much. And wait, you're from Hawaii, so I'm missing a couple of fingers, so I can't do it right. But I'm like, hang loose, man.
I think that's the one right there.
That one right there. Yeah.
I love it.
Looks like I'm throwing signs, man. I got to be careful. West side. East side.
You got it, brother. And for our listeners out there, please do connect with Shilo at his website, shiloharris.com, and make sure to connect with 1 Mile 1 Veteran the 1 Mile 1 Veteran podcast on Reached Across America Radio, ready for you on platforms like iHeartRadio, Odyssey, and the TuneIn app.